Hello everyone. Welcome to today's live broadcast, combining practical training with virtual training and continuous development of lab animal vets. I'm Robert Castellanos of LabRoots, and I'll be your moderator for today's event. We are delighted to bring you this educational web seminar presented by LabRoots. LabRoots is a leading scientific social networking website and producer of educational virtual events and webinars, contributing to the advancements of science through content sharing capabilities. LabRoots is a powerful advocate in amplifying global networks and communities. We have a few important announcements before we begin. This webcast is designed to be interactive, and we encourage you to ask questions during the event. You can submit questions by typing them in the Q&A box, which can be found by clicking on the green Q&A button at the lower left of the presentation window. We'll try to answer as many questions as we can. You can enlarge the slide window by clicking on the screen icon in the lower right-hand corner of the slide window. If you have any technical problems viewing or hearing this presentation, please click on the support button at the top right of your presentation window or submit your problem through the green Q&A button lower left. I'd like to introduce today's speaker, Dr. Aksel Hansen. Dr. Hansen graduated in 1985 as DVM from the Royal Veterinary and Agriculture University in Copenhagen, Denmark. He was awarded the degree of Doctor of Veterinary Science based upon his thesis on the impact of bacteria in laboratory rats. Dr. Hansen is today a professor in laboratory and animal science and welfare under the University of Copenhagen. He was made chartered diplomat and together with 6 others founded the European College of Laboratory Animal Medicine. His research area has primarily been on the microbiota and its impact on laboratory models for inflammatory diseases and how this works in conjunction with the diet. He has published 158 peer-reviewed papers in scientific journals and 36 papers in books, proceedings, or popular journals. I'll now turn it over to the doctor for his presentation.
Thank you very much, Bob. And I would like to thank LabRoots and the organizers for inviting me here today to give a talk about how to educate and develop lab animal vets, which is a subject that I have always liked to deal with. As Bob just told, I'm a vet myself. I graduated back in 1985. I've been working most of my career as a lab animal vet, a lab animal scientist, a researcher within lab animal science and welfare. I've been employed with a lab animal breeder, the facility in Denmark, which is today part of Taconic, but also then the lab animal vet at the University of Copenhagen University Hospital for a range of different animal species. And today I'm teaching vet students how to become future lab animal vets, and we are also having our postgraduate programs for those who want to continue their development. And this is some of the things I'm going to talk about today. What are the tasks of the laboratory animal vet? We should know something about the legislation that regulates the use of laboratory animals. We should be able to communicate this to staff and to the public and to scientists. We should be aware of ethics, animal welfare, and the 3 R's. We should be familiar with animal care and management. We should be able to deal with the health issues of the animals. We should know how these animals are produced by breeding and the background genetics. We should be able to anesthetize or pain treat the animals or do surgery in them. And we should know how animals are used for modeling human diseases. And also, if you ask the European Union and if you ask the legislation, we should be familiar with the local environment that we're working in. And why do we then need postgraduate training in laboratory animal medicine? In Europe and other places in the world, in the US and in Asia, in Africa, South America, and so, there are vet schools, and they graduate vets. For most of these vet schools, there seems to be some sort of curriculum animal species, which are the traditional pet and sports animals and the production animals. Also, there will be some European vet schools and also some of the US vet schools where they include also the lab animals in the curriculum, very much based about whether they have a large pharmaceutical industry to serve also with their veterinary candidates. In Europe, all this is accredited by the European Association for Accreditation of Veterinary Education. However, for those vets who graduate from vet schools with a more traditional curriculum, they need to add on some lab animal medicine to also become familiar with lab animals and to be able to work within this field. And to fulfill the claims for being accepted as designated vets in the facilities, they need some additional specialist knowledge, and they need some practical training as well. The universities, and that would mostly be the vet schools, they can supply some of these knowledge, also the things that has to be added on the top of the basic veterinary education. But some of it will also have to be added on the job. That implies for a lot of the practical training, which is more convenient to set up in a job situation than to make more artificially in a school situation. Before 2011, we had the old European Union directive, which was actually very weak in the educational demands for veterinarians. It mostly just told us that there need to be a vet in a facility. We had FELASA, the European Lab Animal Science Association, which had the category D, which was a general category for experts, which were covered by the European Union directive. It was not solely made up for veterinarians, but it described the education needed to become a specialist in lab animal science. And then we had the possibility of becoming an ECLAM diplomat, a specialist in lab animal medicine, which was only for vets. The European Union directive, those were the hardcore legal demands, but they were very weak in their wording. And the more specialized recommendations, these were made by non-governmental organizations such as FELASA and ECLAM, so they had no real legal status. The FELASA guidelines for education of specialists that I just mentioned was a very broad group of claims for education of specialists, but it did not adhere fully to or only to veterinarians. Also biologists and other with a certain background would be able to follow education within this category. Due to this broadness, it did not become the same success as the other categories of FELASA. And why not? It attracted some young vets who wanted from the beginning of their career to specialize and focus on lab animal science. But it also attracted some older, more experienced vets who had been dealing with other issues during their career but now wanted to change into becoming lab animal scientists. And it attracted non-vets, biologists for instance, who had a biological background but wanted to specialize in lab animal science. And the educational needs for these three groups, they didn't overlap very much. So therefore it was difficult to set up these programs and to make them relevant for all these three groups. The lab animal vets have for several decades organized themselves in the European Society of Laboratory Animal Veterinarians, ESLAV. The ESLAV objective, that is to promote and disseminate expert veterinary knowledge within the field of laboratory animal science. They do that through meetings, lectures, etc. They advanced veterinary knowledge and skills in subjects connected with breeding, health, welfare, and use of laboratory animals, and they collaborate and exchange information. They also encourage their members to take part in training of other vets. On top of that, we have the European College of Laboratory Animal Medicine. They set standards for postgraduate education in order to allow the vets to graduate as specialists in laboratory animal medicine. And therefore they establish some qualification routes, which can be the standard routes or it can be some alternative routes, but they should all be relevant to the assessment of the candidate's qualifications. And they examine vets to become specialists. And therefore they have these continuing education programs in laboratory animal medicine. ECLAM has a range of expectations to their candidates. They list, same way as the European Union does, that lab animal vets should be able to treat diseases, deal with pain and distress, they should train other staff, they should do research support, they should be able to manage animal husbandry programs, understand animal use protocols, operate facilities, control the environment, deal with laws and regulations, design biomedical research, contribute to the humane use of animals, contribute to ethical discussions, and help to promote the welfare and quality life of research animals. And they're not alone. All over the world, you will see colleges such as ECLAM. What is then the problem in Europe? In Europe, the problem is there are only 4 ECLAM training programs. And when we had the PHALASA D, there were only 2 PHALASA D programs. And to take part of them, you had to be physically present. You had to fly in at least for a period to stay in hotels and be away from your ordinary daily job situation, which was not very popular with the employers who had to do without their employers for a certain period every year for them to go somewhere else to take part in training programs. ECLAM should be a core of SLAB. So there, of course, would be more SLAB members, and some of them would also be ECLAM diplomats. SLAB today consists of some of these young veterinarians just in the beginning of their career, and some of the more experienced veterinarians who have worked in lab animal facilities for many years. When we discuss training, the training needs of these are of course declining with age. The youngs, they need a lot of training to be able to develop their career in lab animal science, while the older ones, they have during their job situation, congresses, courses, etc., already achieved some of these competences which are needed, and they do not have the same need for systematized training programs as the young ones. The optimum situation would be if SLAB members were the young ones who gradually became ECLAM diplomats, so all the older SLAB members, they were all ECLAM diplomats. However, this is not the reality. The reality is that ECLAM is today a very, very small core of SLAB. It contains very, very few young veterinarians and a lot of the older, more experienced ones. Some of those are chartered diplomats, such as myself. We actually founded the college, and during the first years of the college, we also allowed some de facto diplomats into the college, people who already had the proper qualifications and could help build up the college. After a period of 2 years, the plan was that exams every year would let in new diplomats among the younger members of the field. However, most of the members still come from the de facto diplomats, and of course not the chartered diplomats. We were only 7, and it's only slowly progressing to get the young veterinarians into this college. And if we wait just enough time, then of course all these older ECLAM members will leave the college of a more natural route, so to say, which will also mean the death of the college. So something has to be done to allow these young veterinarians to train and develop their career in laboratory animal medicine and to get the competence as laboratory animal specialist. So reality also for ESLAV today is that very, very few of their members, they have either the ECLAM diplomat status or the FELASA Category D status. Doesn't mean that they're not experts, they not just have been registered as such. After 2011, the European Union changed their directive. We had the new directive on the use of laboratory animals, which was in force from 2013. In addition to the directive, the European Union has issued a range of guidance papers how to understand the directive properly. One of these is for the education and training framework. Within this guidance paper, you can find descriptions of the different levels of staff which are going to work with laboratory animals. This is replacing the older FELASA Category A, B, C, and D. A bit confusingly, the European Union is also talking about function A, B, and D. We will not talk about today, but important thing is that this guidance paper actually also contains claims for competences needed by laboratory animal veterinarians if they're going to be legally accepted as designated veterinarians in the laboratory animal facilities. If we try to group this, there is some basic veterinary knowledge that these veterinarians need to have. They need to be vets. They need to come from an accepted vet school and to be able to do the things that vets are supposed to be doing. On top of that, they need to add some knowledge within laboratory animal science. This is not specific veterinary knowledge. This is actually some of the elements which was formerly known as FELASA Category C, but today is termed function ABD in the European Union guidance paper. And then on top of that, they need to add on some specific competences which are for lab animal vets. If they want to become lab animal vets, it is listed in the guidance papers. What should they be able to do? And first, when they have proven that they fulfill these learning outcomes, the European Union will regard them as fully competent laboratory animal veterinarians. The presupposed knowledge includes knowledge on national legislation, ethics, animal welfare, all the basic and appropriate biology of the species, animal care, health and management, recognition of pain, suffering, distress, humane methods of killing, and some of the minimally invasive procedures, ethics, animal welfare, and the 3 Rs, and something about design and procedures. Some of the things you would also expect from people holding a license to perform animal experimentation. As I mentioned, I won't dig much into details about this. It is several pages in the guidance paper that describes the learning outcomes of this. It is known as the EU functions ABD. But as I mentioned, in addition to that, there are specific veterinary demands in the guidance paper. These are described as the EU modules 24 and the EU module 50. For each part of this, there are very detailed learning outcomes that the vets should be able to fulfill and that they should prove that they are fulfilling. And those are described within legislation and veterinary communication, ethics, animal welfare and the 3Rs, animal care and management, laboratory animal health, genetics and breeding, anesthesia, analgesia and surgery, animal models of human diseases, introduction to the local environment. That is the module 50, that the veterinarian in a certain facility should be probably introduced to the local environment in order to be able also to guide new staff into this local environment. So if we go back to this one, we can say that this EU guidance paper, module 24, covers what needs to be put on top of a basic veterinary education to become a laboratory animal veterinarian. This is, in my eyes, something which can be probably covered still by the vet schools. But on top of this, also to fulfill the EU guidance paper, you need some current on-the-job training, which needs to be performed on the job. So the learning outcomes actually only helps you to be able to do your on-the-job practical training. So how can we change the situation in Europe so we get more laboratory animal veterinarians probably graduated and make them fulfill this module 24 under the EU guidance paper? I think when I read the guidance paper, and Felase agrees with me on that, is that most of this can actually be fulfilled by online programs. This will disregard in the future the need for veterinarians to travel across Europe, to join with a few physically placed training programs which are placed in distant regions compared to where they live originally and want to work. It is actually possible to do this on a fully online basis. So if we look at what should be added to the veterinary education, I think it's the task of the vet schools to supply the learning outcomes of the module 24, and it's the task of ECLAM to supply the practical on-the-job training, to supervise that and to examine that, so that at the end a young veterinarian can graduate as an ECLAM diplomat. We have therefore at our vet school, which is a rather large vet school, it's the only one in Denmark, we graduate 180 ordinary veterinarians per year, but also as part of the basic veterinary education, we actually graduate every year 36 out of the 180, which are already from the basic education specialized in in laboratory animals. This is a special need because in the Copenhagen area there's a huge collection of pharmaceutical industry which creates jobs for veterinarians every year. So a lot of the veterinary candidates never go to veterinary practice, they go to the pharmaceutical industry. This is not necessarily a situation that is comparable to a range of other countries where veterinarians, all of them go to more traditional veterinary jobs. In Denmark, the pharmaceutical industry is the major part of the national economy, and therefore there is a need for a huge number of lab animal vets. So we have the experience also teaching lab animal science to veterinarians. So we have developed an online program which is available for everybody who wants to join in. It is organized by the university and runs under the quality assurance of the university. It is 30 European credit transfer programs, and it deals with laboratory animal medicine such as it is described in the modules of the EU guidance paper. It's only for vets. Previously we had a Filasa Category D program. We have closed down that, so we do not take any other than vets for this program. It's 100% online. It's only theory. There are some practical issues you have to do at home, but what you get from us is the theory. It's fully adherent to the EU consensus paper, and we have achieved Filasa accreditation according to this EU guidance paper. And compared to our old master program, it's much, much cheaper because it's fully online. And on the top of that, you don't have to travel. So in that way, it's also cheaper. It can be found by entering a homepage which will guide you into the program. Of course, there are some pre-demands to enter the program. You will have to be a vet. You will need to have 2 years working experience before you join. So you cannot just click on the internet and get into the program. There are some admittance criteria which we have agreed with Filasa about that we have to check before you let you in. But you can of course start visiting the homepage. If you just want to see what it's about, and everybody can do that, we have a basic version which is online. So by paying with your credit card a license fee of 250 euros, you can actually get into the system and you can see most of the lectures, and you could do a range of the tests that we do with the participants, but we won't be there to teach you, and we won't be there to discuss and answer your questions. But you can see what it is. But to be certified from this program, you need to enter the full program, which is 30 ECTS. In there will be some online teaching. It is mainly the same material as we have on the basic version. There will be teacher and student interaction over the internet. There will be some reports that you need to write, and there will be a local coordinator in your region that you can access to discuss some practical matters. And your participation in the program will be evaluated afterwards, and you will get a Filasa accredited certificate at the end. To help people into the program, we have arranged with some coordinators different places in the world so that people can talk to them, and they can help these people get into the program, and they can help them along the way if they have practical matters they want to discuss. You will also, during the program, need to find a local supervisor to help you write reports on the local legislation. That can be the coordinator, but it could also be some other qualified person. Also, if you want to talk to us and ask questions about the program, just want to hear about it without actually having joined the program, we have a Facebook page that you can enter and hear news and see different elements of the program. What we offer in this LabVet Europe program, that is fulfillment of these specific veterinary learning outcomes. But it's of course also possible to do the other parts of the EU guidance paper. So if for some reason, if you just have a basic veterinary education and you do not fulfill the other demands of the European Union, then we also have a possibility of taking most of this online, also in the FALASA accredited version. This, of course, implies that there are some practical sessions that you have to join, so you will have to spend some time in Copenhagen to do the practicals. But I think this is a way that many more courses could be offered worldwide, that participants only spend a short time physically present at the course organizer to do practicals, while the remaining part of the course, the teaching of the theory, can easily be done online. So we demand, if you want to join the ABD part of the course, that you come for 2 days to Copenhagen, and then you can go back home again and do the remaining part of the course through the internet. When you enter, for instance, the LabVet program, you'll start by just getting a list of the different modules. And I'm not going to dig into those. I showed you those from the EU guidance paper before. But if you click on one of the modules, you'll get into a page where you'll find the different materials. We always start with a welcome video, so within each module there'll be a video instructing you what to do if you want to be taught within this module. There will also be something you have to read yourself. There'll be a reading list or something you simply have to get books, papers or so, and read and study yourself. There'll be some videos which have been produced by the University of Copenhagen video department, which in a more, what you can say, Discovery Channel way, shows the issues that you're going to learn. But there will also be some more traditional lectures. And we have some activities, some quizzes, some reports, something that you have to do and will get a feedback on. Some of this is mandatory and some is more voluntary. We use these 2 books as the curriculum that you need to read, and those are quite comprehensive books, but you should also be aware that 30 European credit transfer points, that is actually half a year full-time work. Also, a possibility that we use and that others can use as well if they want to set up similar programs is that there's actually a commercial system available where they sell access to internet lectures. And there is a lab animal science section within these Henry Stewart talks. So we use some of these Henry Stewart talks to have other experts than ourselves to give input to things such as ethics, anesthesia, animal modeling, breeding of animals, and so. And it's actually not possible from this company to buy just single lectures. So if you're part of our program, you can actually also hear all the other lectures if you want to and find interest in that. We arrange all our exams in an online version. So we're able to examine people online, apart from one thing, that is examination of practical capabilities. Of course, we need to assure if there's a practical element, as there is in our ABD part of the educational program, then we need to assess on site that people are performing properly. So while being with us in Copenhagen, there are some certain skills that an instructor will have to check with you that you're capable of doing after having taken part in the practicals. And there we are quite old-fashioned. We have a meeting card that the participant will print and bring with them, and will be signed by the instructor if the skill is performed acceptably. Another challenge, that is the geographical dispersion. People cannot fly in to have exams which are only short time, so we need to be able to do this in an online way. But it can actually be done. We have 2 exams on the LabVet program, for instance. There's a written exam and there's an oral exam. Some part of the curriculum is covered by the written exam, and some parts of the curriculum is covered by the oral exam. The written exam is 4 hours and is fully online, and the examinand can be placed wherever he or she prefers to be. They just need their computer. They can use all the helping tools they want to. Also, if they want to do live and electronic communications along the road while doing the exams, then they can do that. They just have to hand in their reply within 4 hours. But we have secured that we can still examine them, although they actually have access to also discussing the issues with other experts in the fields. They must sign a statement that the person will write all replies on the computers. So, of course, if they have somebody not being themselves to write the replies, this is a criminal act. And as we get all the answers online, then we check automatically for plagiarism, and that will, of course, lead to failure, but it can also be used as a rejection from the program if the violation is severe. We also have the oral exam. At the oral exam, 48 hours before the exam starts, we give the examinand 8 different subjects from the curriculum. They have to prepare a 20-minute presentation, including electronic slides as these ones I'm using now, on each of these subjects. And at the end of the period, we'll make ourselves online with the students, and they will draw one of these presentations and they will present it. At both the written and the oral examiner, there'll be one of the teachers, and there'll be an external examiner, for instance, an ECLAM diplomat we have hired from the industry, or whoever it could be, a specialist. They have to be recognized by the university as censors for this type of exam. And then, of course, we need to secure when we plan the exam that the exam actually secures that the student fulfills the learning outcomes. I've previously, together with Dorte Bratbo Sørensen, who is one of the other teachers on this program, written this paper in the Lab Animal Journal, where you can read more about the strategies for assessment of competence on these laboratory animal science courses, and our experience, for instance, by doing online exams. Shortly, I can say we've had good experiences. We have also examined a number of students online on the old master programs. We have also rejected some of them due to attempts to plagiarism, so that they have been caught while stealing things from the internet and using replies. Not many, but it shows that the system works. For those who participate in our LabVet program, we also offer them to join the ECLAM training program. The LabVet Europe program will then be the didactic part, and as part of the ECLAM claims, they need to do 2 projects at home that they can publish, and they can get supervision for that. And there needs to be a practical part. They will do that in their home facilities, but if their home facilities do not have all the species which are claimed by ECLAM, they need to go somewhere else for a period. There will be a personal education plan for them. They must get supervision by an ECLAM diplomat that we will arrange for them. Some of the supervision will be long distance, but they also need to meet with the ECLAM diplomat on Skype or physically. They will have visits on site from the supervisor, and we offer to make some webinars for those who are parts of this program, and we'll make some test exams for them. The disadvantage, if there is any by this, is that I have to join this training as quickly as possible, because they need to be enrolled in this alternate training for a minimum of 3 years, and it only counts from the day they actually enroll into the program. And this should allow them to enter the final ECLAM exam, and hopefully it should also allow them to pass. So by this we hope we can add to having more ECLAM diplomats in Europe and make ECLAM as successful as the American college ACLAM has been for decades. That was my talk. I thank you very much for listening.
Thank you very much for that informative presentation. Before we get to the question and answer section, I would like to remind our audience how to submit questions. You can submit questions by typing them in the Q&A box, which can be found by clicking on the green Q&A button at the lower left of the presentation window. We're going to try to answer as many questions as we possibly can. All questions that we're not able to get to will be answered offline. Our first question for you, Doctor, is, do you think there will be a need to train certain number of non-veterinarians in the future, as it is done in the old European Category D?
Yes, that's of course a good question. I think there will. I don't think it will be huge, but if we look around in the facilities, the veterinarians, they do not hold all the positions, and you can say some of the other basic educations that the universities offers could actually also be more relevant for some of the other positions. Many of the managers, they have a basic education rather within animal science and for instance also more basic biology than they're not all veterinarians. So there will be a need also to train them. And actually also the European Union guidance paper, they have a module which describes learning outcomes for managers. So I think in the future we will also see online programs to train managers, and those can be a variety of other basic educations which would enter such programs. I still think the majority of those who will train as specialists, they will be veterinarians, but I'm quite confident that we'll see other programs as well.
Thank you. And our next question is, how do you assure that the examinants are not just spending their time on calling friends to help them when they do the written online exams?
Yeah, you could fear when you have these examiners sit and they have access to the entire world. It could be like some of these quiz programs that you can ask the audience, or you can call a friend, and so, and actually they can do that, but it's this very intimate forum. I can say that there are some tricks that you can use to prevent them from spending all their time doing that, and one of the most important tricks, that is to overwhelm them with questions. So what we do is that we calculate how long time will it take you to reply to this question if you know the answer. So and then you add it all up, and then you make sure that there's very little time to actually do anything else than typing it on the computer. So during, for instance, a 4-hour exam, you would allow them 10, 12, 15 minutes or so to look into books or do other things. But if they sit reading in the books all the time, if they call friends, or they rewatch the videos or whatever, I mean they're going to spend all their time doing that, and they won't be able to reply to a sufficient amount of questions to be able to pass the exam. So I think that works quite well, and I don't think actually these type of exams differs very much from the way many of the other ways we examine the students. Students, they also hand in reports, and so they write at home, and of course they can get all possible help, and many of the young students actually do get that from the parents, and so life is not always fair. So to say, also for many of the other things you do, you cannot really control how much help they get. So in this way, a very short time online exam is actually much more strict because they're not capable of doing much else than actually replying to questions we give them. And if they copy from internet or books or whatever they do, the plagiarism system will catch it immediately, and they will fail the exam.
Wow, that is a very thorough and comprehensive system. Very glad that is in place. So it looks like we have time for one last question here. And again, I want to remind our audience that all the additional questions will be answered via email. How long or how much time would it take to pass through your entire exam through the Animal Vet program?
Yes, in principle, as in the European credit transfer system, 1 year of study, that is 60 ECTS points, and our program, the 30 ECTS program, so you should be able to do it half a year. But I mean, as all these trainees, they're having jobs, full-time jobs while doing this. It's obvious that nobody will be able to do that. So far the program is so new, so we haven't graduated any yet. I can see from the progress that they make that the fastest one, they are probably able to do it in a year or a year and a half or so. So the first one, which entered the program when we started it a year ago, they will probably be examined in summertime. But I think many of them will spend more time and some of them might even spend 3 or 4 years before we see them at the exam. But I think that's one of the wonderful things with having these online systems, that if you avoid having too many real-time events and so, then they can actually work with huge flexibility. Some can do it at a very rapid speed, and some can take more time to do it. So even though sometimes when I sit with the program, I get a bit annoyed that I think the students are too slow in their progression. I think it's a big advantage that they actually can do it at their own speed.
Well, thank you, Dr. Hansen, for your time today and for your presentation. Before we let you go, do you have any final comments?
I hope that I have given you a short introduction to how these things can be organized, and my hope is that we in the future can have much more training of lab animal vets than we have had until date. Of course, doing things online, you will miss the physical contact with the participants. But I think the huge advantage fully counteracts it, and that is that you're able of training far more people worldwide, also in areas where veterinary training has previously not been available at all. They can join these programs. So I think we will also hopefully see specialists also in more distant regions outside Europe, outside the US, and so that is my hope, and I hope I have added a bit to this. And I've been very happy to join this LabRoots conference. Thank you very much for inviting me.
Well, Doctor, it was our privilege and honor to have you today. I'd also like to thank our sponsor, LabRoots, for making today's educational webcast possible. Today's webcast will be available for on-demand viewing through May 2017. You'll receive an email from LabRoots alerting you when this webcast will be available for replay. We invite you to forward that announcement to your colleagues who may have missed today's live event. And until next time, goodbye.